Jason McIntyre and I, Rob Parker, filling in for Dan Patrick. And let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm not totally surprised about where the Cowboys are because I think a couple weeks ago when they blew out Atlanta and people were ranting and raving about how great they are, look at the numbers, Dak is the MVP and all that. Jason, I thought all that was hyperbole and over the top because they blew out the terrible Atlanta Falcons. And the last couple of weeks has told me more about the Cowboys than I think the blowout of Atlanta, because I really believe that the Cowboys are fraudulent and not one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, Rob, it's great to be here early. Black Friday, had a great Thanksgiving, except for the referees.
Can I say one thing about Black Friday?
Wait a minute.
Let me
Rob,
say one thing about Black Friday.
I need to go in on the referees to start this show.
I want you to do that.
No,
Rob,
hold on. Black Friday's exciting. I know people are waiting in line listening to this, waiting for our hot takes coming in. And I got to say, the Cowboys, they had a tough one yesterday, and they got a raw deal from the referees. I don't understand, Rob, how on a Thanksgiving day when everybody's pigging out and 30 million people are watching Dallas Vegas, we came out to see a ref show. Are you kidding me? This was the most penalized game in the last 18 years in the NFL, where both teams had over 14 penalties and over 100 yards. And you cannot trot out that product on Thanksgiving Day in a massive game, a huge swing game. The Raiders, who are a dumpster fire, Rob, we know that, literally a dumpster fire with all that's happening there. They are cratering, and the refs basically saved them because they threw a flag on every play. Rob, listen, I'm out here on Black Friday. I'm very thankful for a lot of stuff. My family, being able to have a podcast here on iHeart and doing stuff for FS1 and hosting a show today with you. And Rob Parker, I'm just coming in very disappointed with the NFL product yesterday, highlighted by the referees, the zebras, as you like to call them, in that Dallas-Vegas game. That was awful.
Yeah, I get all that, but I'm not going to let it would be one thing if it was one-sided. It was called that way, if you want to call it tight on both ends, or it was a flag day. I get all that, but it was not just against the Cowboys. It was equally divvied out, and it just talks a lot about where the Cowboys are supposed to win that game, Jason. Yes or no?
They were huge favorites, but Rob, on 3rd and 18, in overtime, can you confidently tell me what is pass interference? Just take a deep breath, because I'm telling you right now, according to the rule book, Anthony Brown, who had a nightmare day, 4 flags against him, that 3rd and 18 penalty that set him up for the game-winning field goal, that was not pass interference by the book. All the referee guys who go on TV and know the rule book through and through, that was not pass interference. And I don't know why the refs were so insistent to throw a flag. McCarthy couldn't challenge it because you're never going to win that. But that ruined the game. That tarnished the game for the entire country, 30 million people who were watching that.
I don't know about that. There are a lot of Raider fans who are pretty happy that their team that was dead in the water went to Dallas in a must-win for the Cowboys and came away with an overtime win. So I don't think everybody in America was feeling bad that the Cowboys lost that football game. And it's just a pattern. I mean, look at who they've really beaten this year. The idea, the notion that all these NFL writers and talking heads really thought the Cowboys were the best team in the NFC or NFL
well, that's not
2
over
weeks
yet.
ago.
That's
not over. They're not.
Rob,
look at who they've won. And look who they've lost to. They did not
have their number 1 receiver, Amari Cooper.
Excuses.
They did not have their number 2 receiver, C.D. Lamb.
Excuses.
And their top running back.
How'd they score 33 points? How'd they get?
The Raiders can't stop a nosebleed.
Okay, then they still could have won that game.
Was not 100%. Yes, they should. They could have won that game. They should have won that game. I will say, Rob, I'm in a survivor pool. I don't know if you do these things where you have to pick one team every week, and a lot of people had the Cowboys yesterday. So I was happy. I had the Bills. Rob, there was 2,468 people in the contest. I'm one of 46 left. The payout is $82,000. So let's just say I'm kind of happy the Cowboys lost from a gambling perspective. But if I'm McCarthy, I'm livid at the refs. And yeah, I'm pretty ticked off at my defense, unable to stop a pretty bad Raiders team, which has been cratering since that Deshaun Jackson, I'm sorry, not Deshaun Jackson, the Henry Ruggs car accident. I mean, this team's just been totally downhill. It's just too much to overcome if you're the Raiders. I don't think they make the playoffs, do you?
I'm just not sure. It's so wide open, and the swings on some of these games. And Buffalo looked dead a few weeks ago, and they looked terrible. They lost to Jacksonville, didn't even score a touchdown in the game. And then, of course, they put up 31 last night. It's all over the place in the NFL, so I'm not really sure. But I do, like you brought up the excuses of missing people or injuries. That's called the NFL. Ask Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, who went on the road to Arizona, the 7-0 Arizona Cardinals, without their top three receivers, without their defensive coordinator who had COVID, right? They had all kinds of people missing, and guess what they did? They won a football game because elite quarterbacks do that, where they'll cover up, and you got guys missing. The next guy has to come up, and the Cowboys had every opportunity. They had a chance, even in that game, at the end, to march down and win the game. Dak could have done that. Instead, they settled for a field goal to tie it. Couldn't they have won the game on that drive?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're throwing to guys who normally aren't even options.
They're on the team. They're not working at 7-Eleven. Are they working at 7-Eleven, or are they on the team?
You could say that about the Green Bay Packers last week. They went into Minnesota with their four best defensive players hurt, and they got their teeth kicked in. The Vikings had 400 yards of offense, 6.2 yards per play, and they beat the Packers. So, this happens to everybody. Everybody gets hurt throughout the season. We've seen Buffalo, offensive line hurt, go into Jacksonville, and Josh Allen gets
Dallas lost
destroyed.
to Denver at home, did they not?
Dallas lost to Denver at home. Tyron Smith did not play. Offensive lineman, no show, and the Denver defensive line killed him. This happens to every single team in the league. Every team gets a raw deal from the refs. Every team has injuries. Tennessee Titans, they were the number one seed in the AFC. They lose Derrick Henry, Julio Jones on the IR, and then they lose to the Texans. So, this is just it's a war of attrition in the NFL. And whoever's going to be the hottest team going into the playoffs is going to be the best team that ultimately wins the Super Bowl, right? I think we could agree on that.
I get part of that, but I just don't think that that's good enough excuse all the time. Is that this was a game, even when they put out the gambling line, they knew that the Cowboys were going to be without people, and they still made them 7.5-point favorites because they still believed at home against a dumpster fire called the Raiders, who had lost 3 in a row and looked bad doing it, that they still should have had enough when you have some of the other pieces that you have on that team to win a game at home. You didn't have to win by 40 to feel good about it, but they should have been able to beat the Raiders, and they weren't. And that's really my point, is that there comes a time where some teams have to be able to just be like, we're going to work our way through it and still win. And you brought up the Packers, but you can't tell me going into that game, and the Packers were the underdogs in Arizona without their people. They weren't a 7.5-point favorite on the road against Arizona without their top 3 receivers. That's a totally different makeup.
Yeah, I think if you're going strictly by the line, then I think that the Buffalo loss against Jacksonville was bigger than the Dallas loss. There was the Cincinnati Bengals were 10-point favorites, and they lost outright to my New York Football Jets. How about that loss? Where were the injuries in that one for the Bengals? This just happens, Rob. You can't overreact to a Week 12 loss. Just like everybody wants to crown people the MVP after 7 weeks or 10 weeks.
I heard Dak was the MVP. Didn't they say he was?
Nobody wins the MVP in Week 9 of the NFL. Nobody wins it in Week 11 or 12. This is just a loss. I think the bigger story is the referees. We need to know and understand what the hell pass interference is. Because Dallas got screwed on that, Rob. That's undeniable. I get it. They lost the game. They were missing 2 receivers. But the NFL cannot have 28
The Cowboys have
flags.
lost 3 of their last 4 games, Jason, and you're talking about referees. Stop
Rob,
it. The only game they won was they beat Atlanta. Stop with the referees, because that's a lame excuse to sit here and say that's the reason why the Cowboys.
I didn't say that's
is that why the Cowboys have lost 3 or 4?
No. We're talking about 2 different things. The reason the Cowboys lost, they were not good yesterday. They were
6-1, and everybody was talking about that they're world beaters, and they've lost 3 or 4 since being 6-1.
Yes, that happens to every team in the league.
No, it doesn't.
The Kansas City Chiefs were under 500, Rob. The Chiefs were under 500, and now they're headed to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. What are we? The Buffalo Bills lost 2 of 3. They looked awful. They got their teeth kicked in at home by Indy. They were in a struggle to maybe make the playoffs, given the upcoming schedule. they're okay. I mean, like, take a deep breath. The Cowboys will be fine. The bigger story is this was the most penalties in an NFL game in 5 years, and it had the largest NFL TV audience of the season. The NFL needs to fix that crap. If you noticed, Rob, no taunting penalties yesterday. The NFL listens. They got rabbit ears, okay? Taunting was one of the big stories. We're getting sick and tired of this taunting garbage. NFL says, ooh, we got to tighten that up. Next thing they got to do, clean up the pass interference crap. I don't like when my product, I'm watching it, 30 million people at home watching, and they're like, flags? Most NFL penalties in a game in 5 years? They've got to fix this, Rob. I'll tell you right now, I don't want to watch Tampa-Indy, a really good game Sunday, or Rams-Packers Sunday, and I want to see 25 penalty flags thrown. That ruins the product. The NFL's better than that, and we don't need this ref show laundry garbage all over the field.
Yeah, to sit around and talk about referees is boring to me. And I just think it's not like it's been done every day. You just said it, in 5 years. So this is an aberration. This isn't normal. It isn't what normally happens. But maybe you have two poorly coached teams, because usually penalties are a reflection of the coach. And so, I mean, you can sit there today and put it all on the referees. And some of those calls were legit. We know that there's some that are questionable because of their judgment calls. But when you have human beings making calls and their judgment calls, you're going to have some that are bad. Do we want to see penalties and see flags thrown? Of course not. But I'm not going to sit here and use that as the only reason. It wasn't like Dallas lost 40-0 because every time they had a big play, it was because of the referees. They lost 36-33, and they should have beaten the Raiders. That's what I'm looking at. And in the situation where they were at, where things were coming undone, and now they've lost 3 or 4. That's the story to me. Why can't they win at home against a team going nowhere? They could have buried the Raiders.
A team going nowhere. The Raiders
they could have buried the Raiders. They would have lost 3 in a row.
The Raiders are in the playoff mix. Going nowhere? What do you mean?
They lost 3 in a row is what I'm talking about, and they were in Dallas.
In the playoff mix.
Dude, you're going to say 5-5, 3 in a row is playoff mix?
You just said the NFC
just
is super
numbers-wise, but I'm talking about where they were and why the Cowboys should have won that game. You don't believe that going in? They should have won that game?
Rob, take away Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Are the Chiefs winning a game?
I don't know, because the Packers didn't have their 3 top receivers,
Justin Jefferson,
and they went on the road and they won.
Yes, with Aaron Rodgers, a historically great quarterback, arguably the second best quarterback in the history of the sport. Dak Prescott, good quarterback. He's not in Aaron Rodgers' class, okay? Like, let's be realistic here. The Cowboys lost a game they should have won, period. They were down their top 2 receivers. You go throughout the league and you take away the top 2 receivers from almost any team. Brady could probably overcome it because he's historically great. He's the GOAT. Aaron Rodgers can probably overcome it because he's right up there with the GOAT. Is Russell Wilson overcoming that without Metcalf and Lockett? Who else you want? I mean, no quarterback can over. I don't even think Mahomes could do that without Hill and Kelce. That would be a tall order, Rob. Very difficult for Dallas. Now I think you got to reboot and move on, and Dallas has to handle its business in the NFC least against the likes of Washington, who it has to play twice. I think it has the Giants one more time, the Eagles, they got Arizona. The road's a little bit tougher because of that loss. But frauds? You don't think that's a little bit harsh?
I'm just not buying into it, because what they do is they beat up on the also-rans, if you look at their schedule. And the one game that they did, they beat New England before New England turned into what they are now, off the board. And I think they had 2 missed field goals, and they only lost by 3 to the Cowboys in that game. I'm just not that impressed with some of the wins that they've had over the Giants and the Eagles and Carolina. I'm not. I'm just saying there are some games. Here we are after they were 6-1, and if you looked on the schedule and thought to yourself, Denver's coming up in Dallas, then they got Atlanta in Dallas, then they go on the road to Kansas City, which have been struggling and not that great, and the Raiders struggling at Dallas. I would think the Cowboys would have won 3 out of 4, not lost 3 out of 4, given that schedule, even if you say to yourself they'll lose at Kansas City, okay? So then there would be 3 out of 4, and instead of now looking at a 7-4 record, right, there would be 9-2, and then we would be talking about the Cowboys and where they are. This is a franchise that hasn't won and haven't been in an NFC Championship game since Moby Dick was a guppy. It's been 25 years, dude. Are you kidding?
It's like your Detroit Lions. They're about as bad as them historically. Yeah, listen, what do the numbers say? Let's take a look. Dallas, fourth most efficient offense in the league.
Against also Rams. Go ahead, keep talking about it.
You can only play your schedule, can you not?
Yeah, but you don't lose 3 out of 4 to the teams that they've lost to, is what I'm saying.
You brought up gambling a lot against the Raiders. They covered in the season opener against the defending champ, Tampa Bay, on the road, right? They covered that. That's a nice cover. It's a loss, but it's a nice cover. They won at New England, which is now proven to be a really, really strong team.
They weren't there at that point. That overtime win, they almost lost it. They got a big play at the end, and they did win that game. But had they lost that game, New England hadn't won 4 in a row at that point.
So you want to discount a win over New England? Fine.
No, I'm not discounting it, but were they that good then? Were they that good then?
New England was ascending. I'll have to look at their record at that point. What about Minnesota? What about the win over Minnesota? Was that good with Cooper Rush on the road, or does Minnesota stink?
No, if you can win that game, I'll give you that. Minnesota's not a world beater. They're like 5-5 or 6-4. They're not that great.
Yeah, they have struggled against the teams in the AFC West. They lost to Denver, not a lot of familiarity. Bad loss with no Tyron Smith. They lost to Kansas City. That's never a bad loss at Arrowhead. Kansas City is a very good team. Dallas's offense lost CeeDee Lamb, did not have Amari Cooper. You want to blame anybody. Why don't you blame Amari Cooper for not being vaccinated? He had to miss 2 games because he was not vaccinated, Rob.
It's a big loss.
That's stupidity. You know? You want to blame anybody, maybe Amari Cooper deserves some blame outside of the referees.